going to have their own respective short functions, right? And everything here is all just for the kidneys. We're going to spend the most time on the kidney. We've already previewed it. We'll talk about the cortex and the medulla, what the differences between them, and the different parts of the cortex and the medulla. Not everything is written down here because there's not a lot of room. Everything you have is on the lecture right now. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Then we're going to zoom in on just the nephron. This should look very familiar to you. This is very similar to what you had to have written for lecture today. Okay, if you weren't able to attend lecture, well, then here's your nephron again. Anything in red are your blood vessels. Anything in blue is part of the nephron. Anything in green is neither. So that is the collecting duct. The collecting duct is not part of the nephron, but that's what the nephrons are all going to drain into. By the time we get into the collecting duct, our tubular fluid, our filtrate, is officially called urine the moment we are in this routine. All right? On this side, these are organs, right? Ureter, urinary bladder, and urethra. Anything with a star is a histology that you should be familiar with. So you're going to have a kidney histology today, and then you have a ureter or urinary bladder. I'm not going to ask you on the final exam on the practical. I'm not going to ask you, hey, where'd this slide come from? The urinary bladder or the ureter? It looks the same. So what I want you to pay attention to specifically is the type of epithelium that is there. There's an epithelium here that does not exist anywhere else in the human body. What is the epithelium that we will finally get to see here? Transitional epithelium. There are only two examples of transitional epithelium in the body. And these are the two examples. The ureter and the urinary bladder. The reason why I mention that is, what is a common mistake that I see? Transitional epithelium being found in the uterus. It's not. The uterus has simple columnar. Simple columnar. So the uterus can stretch, but it doesn't mean that it has transitional epithelium. These are the only two that have transitional epithelium. Make sure you recognize that. That's why there's a star that's there. And then the last part of that urinary system is the urethra. The urethra. So what are the functions of all of these organs? I mentioned in lecture. We're going to do it together. This is where we make the urine. This is where we transport the urine. This is where we store the urine. This is where we excrete the urine. Make, transport, store, excrete. That's our urinary system. That's everything on this side. And then we've got the reproductive system on this side. Anything in blue is from the male reproductive system. Anything in red is from the female reproductive system. One of them is kind of shared, so just keep that in mind. So the idea of the urethra, even though it's under the male, don't forget, the females have a urethra too. It's just that it's separate from the reproductive system, which is why it's not in here. In the male, the urethra is actually shared between two systems. It's shared between the urinary and reproductive because not only can urine pass through the urethra, but something else can pass it called semen. Not at the same time, however, there's a passageways for both of them. Everything in blue is the male, everything in red is the female. Your histology, stars. You should notice that there is a little thing that says review right next to the testis because I want you to review the endocrine part. Revisit the endocrine part and then focus on the reproductive part. The endocrine part is simply making what hormone from the testis? Testosterone. The reproductive part is going back to the actual production of sperm. There's a production of hormone and then there's a production of sperm. Two separate ideas, but they're located in the same thing. The ovary. There's a little thing there that says review. Because there's an endocrine and there's a reproductive part. What is the endocrine part of that ovary? What is it secreting when you think of endocrine? Estrogen and progesterone. We're going to revisit that ovary. Now we are going to focus on the egg and egg production. Everyone say this together with me. Oocyte. 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 That is the technical name for an egg. And this 2 with a degree there, that means secondary. Secondary oocyte. That means that there's a primary oocyte. Is there a tertiary oocyte? No, there isn't. Okay, it may not make sense now, but it will. All right? Primary oocyte, I don't want you to identify in the histology, but we are going to talk about what the primary oocyte actually is in lectures. That's for Tuesday. Secondary oocyte is the actual egg that gets ovulated. So if you hear the term ovulation, this is the one that is being released. And that secondary oocyte is the one that's going to be waiting for possible fertilization. That's the one that will end up in the fallopian tube or the uterine tube. Okay? So review the testis, review the ovary, but now with a reproductive lens. Review the endocrine, but with a reproductive lens. I will go into this later. Let's go and finish up our urinary first. There's some urinary stuff. Take out your lecture from today. We're going to continue on. Have the model right there in front of you. If you don't have the large kidney in front of you, the green board kidney has the same thing, only it's flat. So that gives all of us at the table to have a chance to look at the parts of the kidney. Let's start off with cortex versus medulla. Okay? Those of you who are writing all of this down, how far are we with writing this down? Not repro yet? Okay. Let's do urinary first. We're going to pause for the repro, okay? And then I'll give you some time to write out the repro part. So let's go with the urinary as long as we've got this part with urinary. Okay, the cortex is the outer part. So where I'm tracing right now, I'm going to trace every part of the cortex. Generally, the outer region is the cortex. So a question that could come up is, okay, identify this region of the organ. If I say whole organ, I want the kidney. If I want region of the organ, I'm typically asking for either the cortex or the medulla. This is the cortex. Anything that is the light pink. Anything that is the dark pink is the medulla. And what did I say earlier today in terms of concentration or osmolarity? The deeper into the medulla you go, the saltier it gets. The deeper into the medulla you go, the saltier it gets. So this is the cortex, and then this is the medulla, which is the inner portion. The inner portion can be broke up into the following structures. So I'm just going to focus on the medulla right now, and then I will go back to what the hilum is. Each of these is what's called a renal pyramid. On the green backboard, one of the panels is one renal pyramid. One pyramid. So you see the green back one? I think it's in the middle. It's the one that's in the middle. Okay? That's a single renal pyramid. And then you go to the end of that pyramid, at the tip of that pyramid, like where my pointer is right now, that's what we call the papilla. So the tip of that pyramid is called the papilla or the renal papilla. Your nephron, by the way, you took all of your collecting ducts and you gathered them all up together. This is going to drain straight into the renal papilla. All of the collecting ducts lead to the renal papilla. They're all going to be in this direction. Okay, so that's the renal papilla and the pyramids. Okay, now let's look at between those papilla and pyramids, and we are going to look at these little extensions of the cortex, and these are called the renal columns. The renal columns. So if you took a papilla, a pyramid, and you took the two columns next to it, that's one entire lobe. That's why when we looked at our blood vessels and we said the interlobar arteries, you notice where the interlobar arteries are? They're running right through that little column, right in between the lobes. Okay? So, that's our gross anatomy of the kidney, where urine is going to be formed. Now we are going to collect that urine. Where is it all going to be collected? I want you to now look at an individual pyramid. I want you to follow at the tip of it, and this is an actual kidney now from this picture, but you can still see the same thing. It's going to start draining into these spaces before we get into the ureter. And so urine is collected at the papillae of the pyramids. This is where all of your collecting ducts are supposed to end. And that urine now is going to start accumulating into these small spaces. So let's pick this one. That's a good one. The renal papilla would be right here where my pointer is. That's the actual structure. But the space that it opens into. So if I ask for space, I'm asking for one of these. The first one is what's called the minor calyx. If this is not so obvious, because it's a real one, let's go back to here. This is considered a minor calyx. There's the minor calyx. It's that very first space right after the papilla. This is a minor calyx. That's a minor calyx. That's a minor calyx. That's a minor calyx. If they all drain urine into one common space like this is what's called a major calyx. So this is a major calyx, and so is this. This is a major calyx. So if I put the pin here, it's very different than if I put the pin here. If I put the pin here, I want this tip. I want the structure. If I put the pin here, I want this space. If I put the pin here, I want this space. And all those major calyces, so calyces is going to be the plural. We're going to drain the urine from those major calyces into this common funnel. That common funnel is called the renal pelvis. So in order of appearance, okay, what is the first place that we are going to collect our urine? First off, what do we call, at what point do we actually call it urine? At what point do we actually call it urine? Over here, over there. Where do we actually call it urine? Collecting duct. Let's trace our urine. From that collecting duct, where's that urine supposed to go next? The renal papilla. From the renal papilla, what's the first space that the urine is going to be in? The which one? Minor calyx. So say it with me. Minor calyx. Calyx. Okay. The minor calyx is going to lead to a major calyx. All the major calyxes together, they're all going to drain into this one funnel. What is that funnel called? The renal pelvis. And where's the next place after that renal pelvis that is expected to go? The ureter. Yes, Sam.
As all of like the calyces and the pelvis and stuff, is that all still considered medulla?
Neither. Not anymore. The medulla is, those are spaces for urine collection. The medulla is only the structures that make the urine.
Okay.
Yeah, so the medulla would be just pretty much where this part will extend into and this part will extend into. But the calyces and all of that, those are spaces. Those are no longer medulla. Okay? Now we're at the ureter. The blood vessels we went over in lecture already, and this is a lecture thing. I don't want you to know this for lab, with the exception of 3 things. What are, or I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 things on the slide I want you to know for lab. What are the 5 things? There are 5 items on the slide that I want you to identify that are actually visible on the green backed panel. Which ones do you think are the most important on this list? Afferent and efferent arterial, those 2 are wrong. I need 3 more. What are the 3 things? Glomerulus is number 3, and then there are 2 other items that are visible on the board. It's everything in the box.
The organ.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so can you point out where the afferent and efferent afferent arteriole are and the glomerulus is on the board. There's one of the panels in there that has all of that. See if you can find it. Which one is afferent, which is efferent, and which one is the glomerulus? There is one that's a close-up. There's one part on the board that specifically is a close-up of just this section. I want you to focus on that. So which one is bigger? Which is the one that has to be
Yeah,
wider?
that's just basically, that's just the pyramid. This is actually going to be this is showing the infector and effector, and then it also, yeah, this is the glomerulus right here. This is all the glomerulus. Yeah, and then, yeah,
Alright, which one is the
and then
afferent
from efferent
arteriole?
you would go out to, this is blood vessel, so we follow the efferent out, and then go back. Yeah, and then vascular.
Okay, what is that thing on the side? That's a distal convoluted tubule. That we are going to go over. As to why it's attached to there. Show me afferent, efferent, and glomerulus. There you go. Good. Okay. This is the next thing I want you to find on that panel. And if you didn't catch that first part, make sure somebody at your table shares it with you. Now I want you to look at the middle panel where there is a renal pyramid. Because this is where you are going to find the paratubular capillaries and the vasa recta. Vasa recta is easier. Okay, so let's do the vasa recta. I'll show you. Okay, can you find blood vessels that look like a ladder in that middle panel? Can you find capillaries that look like a blue and red ladder in the middle panel? You have two of them, okay? So here's what. Your vasa recta has to be in the medulla. The vasa recta has to be in the medulla. Your paratubular capillaries are going to be found in the cortex. Go find them.
She said the pyramid thing, the apex. Okay. Yeah, the outside. So sometimes, so in birth conditions, that's like it's still left hand. So it's not just like state.
So is it in the medulla?
Is what?
Yeah. The proximal, is that what we're looking for? The proximal?
Well, yeah, this is the, like how this is the distal one. I think, no, I think this is a
Wait, did we find it? Which one do we think about vasa recta and paratubular? Vasa recta is going to look like a ladder. That's the one.
Yeah.
So they get them separate so that we can see the difference. But in reality, this is going to be sitting on top of that. This is going to be surrounding that, okay? Where are their paratubular capillaries? So the paratubular capillaries are going to be found in the cortex, while, that's all of that. Okay, good, 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 good. Okay, where's your paratubular capillaries and your vasa recta? Which one do you think?
Vasa recta and then paratubular capillary.
That's it. So they separated it in the model, and the reason why they separated the model so you could see the difference between the actual tubular nephron and the actual capillaries. But in reality, the capillaries are going to be surrounding every single piece of that nephron. But they made them separate so we could see the difference. And by the way, the nephron, everyone, is the one that is labeled in white. That is the nephron. That is the nephron. Okay? So, all right. We've taken care of all of that. Everyone, let's go back to the distal convoluted tubule. That's the one we didn't cover. Blah, 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 blah. Here it is. Okay.
There are two real capillaries. The basal something.
The vaso something.
Vasa recta.
Basal rectum.
Okay, so one way to remember it, what did recta mean, or rectus, anything, straight?
Straight.
Straight
hold
vessels.
on.
Straight vessels. Vasa recta, straight vessels.
Rectum or rectum?
Recta. Recta. So you anything rectus femoris, right? Remember that? Rectus abdominis, they all meant one thing. Straight. Vasa recta, straight vessels.
Basal rectum. Straight vessels. What do you mean? Straight.
So does the vaso
And
rectum
then something around the pancreas.
It goes around the loop. And only if it's a long loop. Only if it's a loop, which I didn't go over. You have the ones that are short loops and you have the ones that are long loops. So when you look at the model, some of them are short, some of them are long. Only the one that has a long loop is going to have a vasa recta.
Why do the short loops not
The
have a
other-
or is it just not?
Because they don't contribute to that saltiness. Because they don't go deep. They're just there. They're just there. They help. They contribute to. Okay, pretty much. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's refocus, everybody. Let's refocus, and then we're gonna do some model study. Okay, spend some time model study so that we can get to the reproductive system. Most common question I heard out there is, what the heck is this thing? Why is it there? Okay, this is really important. This is one of the reasons why the distal convoluted tubule is what it is. To find the distal convoluted tubule, so here we are, right? In reality, in our kidneys, it does not look like it's in TP. Distal convoluted tubule, in reality, actually folds back and touches the inflammatory. That's why there is this little functional connection that is right there that's super important. We're going to call this whole connection the juxtaglomerular apparatus. So everybody say that with me. Juxtaglomerular apparatus. Juxta means together. Glomerular is glomerulus. Together with the glomerulus. That's what it means. This thing? Yes. Try your best. If it shows up, if I ask a question about it, okay?
The thing that connects to
That thing that connects to this. All right. So the juxtaglomerular apparatus, this set of contact, look on your model. Do you notice that there is this little specialized set of cells that does not look like anything else? That is called the macula densa. This one I want you to spell. Macula densa.
Is it
Densa. There's these little cuboidal cells, yeah, but they're specialized little cuboidal cells.
Wait, yeah, so is that inside the juxta?
Yes, yes. So the juxtaglomerular apparatus is both of those things. The macula densa and that part next to the glomerulus. Together, that is the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Together. The whole thing. That whole thing. The macula densa are the cells that are part of it that make up the wall of the distal convoluted tubule. That little circle. Okay, so in the model, I wonder if they made it special. Yes, it's like thicker than everywhere else. So in the model, it's that little thick. Yeah, it's a layer of these yellow cuboidal cells that are thicker than everywhere else. Everyone found it? The macula densa is just the part that is in contact. So the whole thing is the distal convoluted tubule. The macula densa is the cluster of cells that is the closest to those arterioles.
The macula densa is in the juxtaglomerular.
Correct. Or so I would rather say, let's see, the macula densa is part of the distal convoluted tubule and part of the juxtaglomerular apparatus, which is the whole connection. The juxtaglomerular apparatus is the whole connection.
Hold on, let's add like
So all of that together, that's the juxtaglomerular apparatus. So it's the full connection of all the parts that are connected to each other.
Oh, so the full structure itself is a distal solitary substance.
The tubule is the distal convoluted tubule. The whole green circle is the distal convoluted tubule. Yes. Juxtaglomerular apparatus.
And then the simple or the columnar that is right there.
The macula densa is part of the juxtaglomerular apparatus.
So it's like, does that include the whole tubule?
No, it does not include the whole tubule. So
Wait, what's
the
the-
juxtaglomerular apparatus doesn't include the whole tubule.
So what is
The
that?
reason why is that the macula densa cells do something that the rest of the tubule does not do. That's why.
If I was to write that down, it's just this.
I'm likely not gonna ask for a function of it because it's too long to put.
Yeah, but how do I explain the structures?
Okay.
Written down.
Okay, so this is when you would ask me, like, okay, do you mean this little connection here, or do you mean this thing? The tubule, all that's in green is the distal convoluted tubule. All of it in green now. That whole thing is the distal convoluted tubule. Just that little cluster and where it's connected to, that's the juxtaglomerular apparatus.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, so the only place. I will draw it.
Okay.
I will draw it, and I will draw it in circles. Okay.
Is it like a gap?
Okay, I am going to,
What are you talking about?
I'm gonna add it to this picture, and then I'm going to put,
Okay.
Green.
okay,
So that's the distal convoluted tubule that you're drawing.
yes, this is the DCT, the whole thing. I'm gonna box what the juxtaglomerular apparatus really is.
Thank you.
Okay.
Convoluted.
That is the juxtaglomerular apparatus. It's only the part of the tubule that is attached to everybody.
And like some
It's a
space.
connection. Exactly, that's exactly what it is. It's a connection.
Is there like some gap, a space?
No, they're all touching each other. That's what makes it the juxtaglomerular apparatus. If they weren't touching each other, if they were far away from each other, it would not be that. It needs to be together.
So it's got some afferent,
So
arterial.
the whole
Yes.
thing is
The reason, if I gave you a concept as to why you have to do it, everybody,
Okay, I need to read this.
the macula densa cells, which is the ones I'm going to shade in blue. That macula densa, those macula densa cells end up producing something to communicate with the afferent artery. That's why.
Inside that is like little section cells, specialized.
Okay, so what I shaded in the dark blue, that's the macula densa. That's why the entire convoluted tubule, the distal convoluted tubule, is not part of the juxtaglomerular apparatus.
It's the distal convoluted tubule. This area is
And
the
there's probably some reabsorption going on there.
juxtaglomerular apparatus.
There's no
Individual
reabsorption
cells are the macula densa.
If I
Okay.
told you, you don't need to know this, but sometimes it helps with a physiology context. Why? If the fluid is flowing too quickly through the distal convoluted tubule, the distal convoluted tubule needs to have a way to communicate with the renal corpuscle beginning to tell them, hey, can you slow down? If the fluid is flowing too slowly in here, there has to be a way to tell this part, can you please speed? This is why caffeine works the way it does. Because this part, this macula densa will do all of that, but caffeine actually antagonizes whatever it's going to do. Caffeine's going to do whatever the heck it wants to do, right? And that's going to increase the flow of fluid. That's what caffeine does. Because of that. They're interfering with the juxtaglomerular apparatus.
And that's why you keep.
So, okay, this is what they throw away. But in reality, this actually falls on top of it.
So it's like there.
Yeah, I just didn't know how to draw it. Okay, so if you're wondering, okay, why does DCT show up 2 times? It's because this is how we have it as we're drawing it out in sort of in a simple way. But in reality, in the kidney, this whole part actually folds on top of it, and they're really close to each other. And that's actually where the DCT would be. Okay, So the juxtaglomerular apparatus, all right, function-wise, in summary, it regulates filtration rate and blood pressure. That's all. That's why. Okay.
For all that, because I know that was the whole thing. Thank you.
That's okay. That's all. Okay, distal convoluted tubule.
Are you
All
just
right.
write DCT?
No.
DCT is okay.
Really?
Yes.
You can write DCT?
Yes, and I'll know what you're talking about.
GG.
Okay,
Can I put a J?
Don't tell me NL for nephron loop. You're gonna tell me nephron loop.
GG.
For this one, I will take PCT for this one. I will take DCT for this one.
You will take-
Give me
Yeah.
collecting duct for this one. Give me nephron loop for this one. Okay, I'm gonna share one more thing here that'll make your life easier. Okay, because the question came up, juxtaglomerular apparatus. I will accept. JGA, guys. Okay. JGA, the whole thing. All right. So what's going on in the rest of the distal convoluted tubule? Once we're past that macula densa, selective reabsorption secretion. That's it. According to our needs.
I have
Yes.
one more question.
Uh-huh.
The part of the DCT that's here, is that towards the end of the collecting duct?
It's
or-
at the beginning. It's right
Or-
at the
yeah.
end of the loop.
Okay, end of the distal.
Yes. I'm gonna
and
put a
beginning of the
star.
duct.
Where this is.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wait, so it's in two places?
No. This is the one without this part. Remember, this is how it is in 2D.
Oh, yeah.
And then we folded it. Yeah, this is where it would fold.
Oh.
This area is the same as
So
that.
it meets,
Uh-huh. So you can even say that's a cross section. That. Got it? Cool. All right. For distal convoluted tubule, apart from that, that's probably the most complicated thing in there. This is where you have selective reabsorption secretion. What do we mean by selective? It's according to your needs. If you ingested too much salt, you want to secrete it and get rid of it. If you drank too much water, you want to get rid of it. Yes. Oh, tubular fluid does. So tubular fluid is going to flow through the whole thing. This is where the filtrate is. So that you remember it. It collects in that space. It goes through a PCT. It goes down the loop. It goes up the loop. It goes to the left. Okay. DCT and passes by the JGA. Okay. And then whatever does not end up going back into the bloodstream will come out as
So tubular fluid.
will become urine. Tubular fluid will become urine. Tubular fluid will become urine. Another term, filtrate. I keep saying filtrate. Filtrate becomes tubular fluid, which will become urine. Filtrate, tubular fluid, urine. You know what? Any of them are neither. None of that is blood. None of that is blood. I just want to make that very clear because it's easy for us to get confused. The blood stays in the capillaries and stays in the arterial. It will never end up, or should never end up in anything in the blood. Got it?
Got it.
So the red are the blood vessels that are part of filtration. So we say that we filter the plasma from the blood. The filtrate is what gets collected. We pull it from the blood. Think of it as a strainer, a very fancy strainer. The glomerulus is a strainer. But we can pull all the fluid out except if it's too big, just like a fine mesh strainer. It will filter everything except for large things. What are large things? Large proteins and cells. If somebody has kidney damage, their glomerulus could be so damaged that it all of a sudden becomes leaky, and then all of a sudden all of that stuff is allowed to go through, which is why finding large proteins and blood in urine is a dangerous thing. How could you cause kidney damage? If you have hypertension that has not been checked. That will ruin your kidneys. That can damage your kidneys pretty bad. Okay? So that's a distal convoluted tubule. The last part over here is are the collecting ducts. The collecting ducts finally receive urine from from the distal convoluted tubule. Can you fill in the blanks for me, that little question mark? Say it with your team, practice it. The adjacent collecting tubules are gonna lead to the renal papilla, which lead to the minor calyces, and then to the, go!
Major
calyces. Okay, and then to the renal pelvis, and then to the ureter, okay? So, before we leave and go into the ureter, these are the only hormones you need to know for the DCT.
DCT.
Distal collecting convoluted tubule. Okay, did we talk about the JGA already? We did.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do we have the JGA? To regulate filtration rate.
Regulate.
Filtration rate and blood pressure. Two hormones that you need to know what they do, but you've already studied these for endocrine. It's the same unit, right? Okay. Aldosterone. Give me two pieces of information for aldosterone. One, where does it come from? Two, what does it do? Aldosterone. This was like last week with endocrine. I know there's like a whole bunch thrown at you in like the last couple of weeks. Oh, well, first, where does it come from? It's the same, it's a similar place where cortisol comes from. That's your hint. Where did it come from? Where did cortisol come from? Okay, go next. Where did cortisol come from?
Pituitary.
Cortisol come from? Where did it come from? The adrenal cortex. Okay. All right, adrenal cortex. Okay, let's think adrenal cortex. There are 3 zones that sounded like Harry Potter spells of the adrenal cortex. Zona glomerulosa was one. What's the second one? The straight one that looks like little fascicles. Is that one? Zona fasciculata. And then the one that was darker, zona reticularis. Okay, aldosterone came from one of those 3 places.
Probably the.
It was at glomerulosa,
Yes.
fasciculata.
Probably
Okay.
Glomerulosa.
So this is how you're gonna remember aldosterone, right? What organ does aldosterone come from? Okay. What is the name of this ball of capillaries? Glomerulosa. Aldosterone comes from the zona glomerulosa. Bruh. Okay? And histologically, we look at a picture, you notice, okay, look at that adrenal cortex again. The zona glomerulosa, even though it's not related, like structurally it's not the same thing, you're gonna notice the little balls. That's how you're gonna remember glomerulosa. Little balls. I think glomerulus actually comes from the term for little balls. That's why. So zona glomerulosa gives you aldosterone. Okay, now that we've established where it came from, where is aldosterone? What is aldosterone supposed to do? Somebody mentioned it, Colton, I think you mentioned it. Reabsorb something. Salt. Cool. Where is the target of that? Specifically in the nephron? The DCT. Okay, the second hormone here that's really important, ADH. Where did it come from? What does it do?
Okay.
Where did it come from? What does it do?
That one's definitely up there.
That's definitely up there, yes. Anterior or posterior? Where did it come from?
Posterior.
Posterior, awesome. What's the other name for ADH?
Vasopressin.
Vaso, as in blood vessel, pressin. Pressure, guys, blood pressure. This is what ADH is gonna do. It increases water reabsorption and increases your blood pressure. Done. Okay? It's an idea that you may not realize you already know and you already have, but it's there. You're like, I guess so. I believe you. I guess if you say.
Whatever you think.
So more ADH means less water in your urine, right?
Yep. More ADH means less water in your urine. So if you drank copious gallons of water, do you want ADH or do you not want ADH?
Depends on where you're going.
Copious gallons of water. Do you want ADH or do you not want ADH? Because you drunk copious amounts of water, you're not going to want to retain all of that. You're only going to need to retain what you need. If you
Doesn't caffeine also not block vasopressin, but
something else does, it's not caffeine.
Oh.
You know the other thing that's going to block vasopressin? Alcohol.
Alcohol.
oh, that's what I'm
So
thinking
think twice before you get that Red Bull and vodka, folks.
Oh.
Because you're gonna feel so dehydrated because of both of this.
of.
Okay, you're gonna target the JGA and you're gonna target the collecting stuff. That's why I don't drink that. That's why I don't drink Red Bull and vodka. I just don't. I'm sorry, I'm a tropical fruit type of girl. I like my pina coladas and my Mai Tais. I'm sorry. And my Kahlua iced coffee. Okay, that though, I will drink that. Okay, dehydration or not, so worth it. Okay, so we talked about that. Okay, I'm gonna quickly go over this story.
Oh my god.
Anybody heard of this one?
Oh, I just
Came in second place.
just heard of this like 2 weeks ago.
Hold you
Came in second place, but she died.
Long.
She died.
She didn't even win.
She didn't even She lost in the most worst possible way. Why? This is a contest when the Wii, Nintendo Wii was like a big thing. Everybody wanted one for Christmas. She had 3 kids.
They still
This
have
mom
it.
had some kids that she wanted to give them to.
That's so sad.
A nurse called into the station and said, like, this is dangerous, you should not be doing this. Stop it. And they said, no, this is our promo. Basically what the contest was, you had to drink a lot of water, as much water as you can, and not go to the bathroom. So what do you think is going to happen? That water is going to accumulate. Where does it accumulate? Everywhere is interstitial fluid.
That's so
And where's the most interstitial fluid that we're going to have to get to this brain cortisol? The brain and spinal cord. Your central nervous system.
So her brain expanded
is
and killed
the
her.
first one that is going to suffer from having too much water. And this is exactly what happened. She complained of some headaches and she was found in dead. This is her belly that has been distended by that much water. She would drink 2 gallons of water every 3 hours. Okay, just to get this Christmas gift for her kids. And of course, her family had sued the radio station and they had not compensated. And they never did this. It was a radio station in Sacramento.
What happened to the
So
person
yes, you
first
can drink
place?
too
They
much
drank more water than
Especially
her.
if the nurse called it and said, "Don't."
Yeah, and don't do it. Yeah, I would trust them. And then the last part is all just anatomy. So that's your ureters. Best place to find your transitional epithelium, okay? Is the ureters and the urinary bladder, okay? Mucosa, transitional epithelium. Muscularis, which is made up of what kind of muscle?
Smooth.
Smooth muscle. That's easy to find because you can kind of see it in the circular layer that's here in the longitudinal. All of this is all smooth muscle. It's a very muscular tube. You are likely going to get just a focus on the transitional epithelium though, and not so much on the whole thing. Adventitia is the outermost. And then the bladder looks just like the ureter, only that it's an actual container rather than a tube. Everyone identify that right now where the ureter and the bladder is on your model. Those are pretty easy to find. Identify the ureters and identify the bladder. The ureters are the ones that are kind of like the little plastic tubes. Okay. What is the type of mucosa that you find in here again? What kind of epithelium is there again? Is it the same? Transitional. Your transitional looks like flattened mushrooms. Don't forget your transitional, they look like flattened mushrooms. And you've got muscle with this as well. And this is smooth muscle, and then you've got adventitia. So this looks just like this, only that it's a container. This one transports urine, this one stores the urine, and then we're ready to get rid of the urine. That's the urethra. In the female, it's pretty straightforward with the female, it's shorter. So between the two of them, who do you think is more likely to suffer from urinary tract infections? Male or female? Female, because the urethra is shorter. And so in the female, it's gonna look something like this. You have two muscles, you have two sphincters that are there. The internal one is the first set right at the beginning of the urethra. That is made up of what kind of muscle if it is involuntary? Smooth. And then you have this one, the external urethral sphincter. That is made up of skeletal muscle, voluntarily controlled. In the male, it's different. Still the urethra, they still have an internal and external, except that it's divided into 3 regions depending on where we are. Okay, so everyone follow along with me. Okay, this is what structure again? What is this thing?
Bladder.
Okay, the bladder. All right, and then we go into the urethra. The internal urethral sphincter is right about here. The external one is lower. So first region that urethra will pass through, it will pass through one of the secondary accessory glands in the male. That's called the prostate gland. So we call this little section the prostatic urethra. So what do you think happens when they are suffering from an enlarged prostate gland? That affects the urethra. They end up going more frequently. And it can be painful. Because what do you think is lining that urethra? Okay, you have smooth muscle also there. Okay? So, this is the prostate. That's the prostatic urethra. Then it's going to cross through what's called the urogenital diaphragm, which is this sheath. You don't need to know that name, the urogenital diaphragm. But this little section of the urethra, just passing through that floor, that is the membranous urethra. And then, through the penis. So this is the penis, which is found on this side. This is the longest part, the spongy urethra or the penile urethra. What are the 2 things that can go through that urethra but not at the same time? Sperm and urine, but not at the same time.
So the membranous urethra is only that teeny little part?
Just that little teeny part.
Okay. What does it mean something?
I guarantee that she's probably gonna pick that.
Prostatic, membranous, spongy.
Spongy. Why does it
The
mean
3
something?
parts.
It doesn't mean something. It really doesn't. It can just all be urethra. It doesn't just mean spongy.
Okay. That's it for urinary system, guys. We have a couple of choices. Should we just knock this out and go? Or let's take some time and take a little bit of a break. Do some urinary. Let me see on time. We're at what, 10:30? I think it is time for a break. Guys, make sure you take a break. Don't take too long of a break.